Okay, welcome to the last round of our one. We are on the play. We have a decent hand. We have Underground Sea, Tamio, Sword Size, Force of Will, and Orcish Bowmaster. And here I'm going to choose to lead on the Tamio so that we can apply on our second turn Sword Size and the Surveillant. We have a Force of Will as backup. Our opponent leads here with an Ancient Tomb and a Chalice of the Void, so it could be a mono red deck, for example, or some kind of Eldrazi. We are going to force the Chalice because we can't play with an active Chalice in game. And here we are going to attack first. Then we want to play the Sword Size to see what is in our opponent's hand. And then we can make a decision on the Survey trigger, and our opponent shows us here a Sword Knot Seer, an Eldrazi Linebreaker, and important an Eye of Ugin, so that he can play the Sword Knot Seer on the second turn. And he also has a Reality Smasher in hand, so we have to keep this in mind. And I'm thinking here it's the best choice to take the Sword Knot Seer, because we can deal with the Linebreaker with a jump block of Orcish Bowmaster. The Linebreaker has a toughness of 3, so we can ping it once and block it down with the Orcish Bowmaster and have to deal with the Reality Smasher later. And here we have a Ponder. I'm thinking Ponder is fine. It's maybe better than a blind card. And our opponent plays the known Cavern of Souls and is making the Educated Linebreaker play. So we have to dodge or tank the damage here and have to deal it on the second turn with the Orcish Bowmaster. And here we have to make the Ponder play and really find a land. And here we find a Barrowgolf, which is really handy, and we have a Wasteland for maybe the Ancient Tomb or the Cavern of Souls. And here I'm thinking we have 3 lines to play. We can take the Wasteland, play the Orcish Bowmaster, but then the Reality Smasher is on the battlefield and we can't deal with it with Molten Collapse. We can take the Polluted Delta and kill the Linebreaker with the Molten Collapse, but then we have no removal for the Reality Smasher, so it's really a hard decision to make. The Barrowgolf is really tempting, I'm thinking, but I think the best line is to prevent our opponent from playing the Reality Smasher. We can take 1 or 2 more hits from the Linebreaker, so I'm thinking it's a good stack to draw the Wasteland, to waste the Ancient Tomb, and so that we can draw then a fetch land, and under the fetch land the Barrowgolf, so that we can decide whether we want to keep the Barrowgolf under the fetch land, and so we can prevent the Reality Smasher, at least for now. On the next turn we can block the Linebreaker down, we draw the fetch land, and can then make a decision whether we want to fetch for a red source or draw the Barrowgolf underneath it. But our plans changed here because our opponent drew a Wasteland, which really shaked our plans up. So we have to use the fetch land now and have no access to the Barrowgolf underneath it. And here I'm not wasting the Molten Collapse. I want to really get the Linebreaker efficiency handled by Orcish Bowmaster. So we wait for the attack. We will take some kind of damage because he tramples through, but I'm thinking it's okay. And here I make the count because I'm really scared if we don't block with the Tamio, we will get enough damage that the Reality Smasher can kill us on 1 turn. So I'm making here a full block with all creatures to prevent the Reality Smasher from killing us, because we can only deal with it on sorcery speed. So if we don't make the full block, we are dead if our opponent draws some mana to cast the Reality Smasher, and 1 creature will survive. It's most likely the token, and our opponent agreed here. He let the token live, and for now We have a fetch land we want to draw first. So we do a Force of Will, which will likely not matter in this game. We are going to attack and hoping that at the end of our opponent's turn we can crack our fetch land for the Surveillant and find a good card. Best card would be here Barrowgolf or Murktide Regent, so that we can stabilize on board. But here we don't have the Surveillant. We used it on our second turn, so I missed that here. I thought it is all in the deck, but it doesn't change our decision. We crack the clue and we draw another land, so a little bit out of gas, as to speak. So we really need to find a threat as soon as possible. And here I'm not going to attack because I really want to keep our defense up, because we lost a life from the fetch land and our opponent plays a Kozilek's command. So the next turn the Reality Smasher will likely come down. And it is a Flashwaker first, which is backed up by a petal. So really bad news. Our opponent has an additional clock and direct damage and generating enough mana. And if our opponent plays the Reality Smasher here with the ping, it's just lethal, so our block will not matter that much. So it's exactly lethal, and we can concede and move to game 2. And from here we have a lot of sideboard options. I think Barrowgolf is excellent, Consign to Memory is also good, and we have seen Chalice of the Void. So I'm really considering Force of Negation here, but first things first, I think the days comes out for 3 Consign and 1 Barrowgolf, and here we can make room for additional Force of Negation, or we can even consider the Explosive and Meltdown for Chalice of the Void. And I'm thinking you can take both Meltdown and Engineered Explosive, but I'm taking here the Engineered Explosive because I'm really thinking what card to trim. I'm thinking you can trim some kind of Bowmaster. He doesn't have any effect on the matchup. We can also trim on 1 Tamio. It's not really a Tamio matchup. So I'm going to trim here 2 Bowmasters and 1 Tamio. I want to keep the Brazen Borrower in, and I also want to keep some Bowmasters in to have some kind of board presence, to maybe jump block a Sword Knot Seer, or as seen block down Eldrazi Linebreaker. And here we have a decent hand. We have Consign to Memory. We have a Barrowgolf and a Force of Will. So if our opponent openings with a Chalice, we have that one covered. And if our opponent casts any Eldrazi, we can counter it also. But here are bad news. Our opponent has an optimal start with Cavern of Souls and Lotus Petal. And here I'm really considering just countering the Lotus Petal, because my main thought here is that the only valid target is for now Chalice of the Void. And Chalice of the Void we can also counter with the Force. So I'm going here to counter just the Lotus Petal to maybe prevent a Grim Monolith, some list 1-2 Grim Monolith. And we'll see whether that was an educated decision. And our opponent had no Chalice of the Void. He has a kind of removal spell, a Kozilek's Command, Sword Knot Seer, Flashwaker, and a Reality Smasher. We are taking here the Flashwaker because it's the card that accelerates our opponent most likely. So I think it was a good decision to counter the Lotus Petal, and our opponent shows us a Wasteland, but is not going after it because he needs the mana on its own. And here's a good timing window to apply the Barrowgolf. And we even can counter the removal spell, or the token generating spell, and the Kozilek's command if needed, because Cavern of Souls doesn't cover it. And here I'm really hard considering our opponent would like to create an Eldrazi spawn, mainly to get access to more mana. And my thinking here is that we have a Kaito. Kaito is a strong card, but if we can force it, our opponent has no access for an Eldrazi mana token, and we can at least buy a turn and connecting with the Barrow Golf, because our opponent has here Eye of Ugin, which is a discount of 2. So with the Eldrazi spawn in play, he can cast the Reality Smasher or get down the Sword Knot Seer, and if he plays the Sword Knot Seer, then our Kaito is gone anyway. So I'm thinking it's the best use of our hand cards to just counter it, because if we don't counter it, our opponent will likely play a Reality Smasher or a Sword Knot Seer, which we can't counter because there's a Cavern of Souls in play, and then the Kaito is gone anyways. So I'm going to counter the spell here, which generates 1 token, and I'm thinking it's a fine decision. It's not a good decision, but we have to make the best out of our options. And here we see what our opponent is casting. He can cast a Sword Knot Seer. He's 1 mana short of the Reality Smasher, so we have no valid target for the Sword Knot Seer, so it's good news for us. And if we get rid of the Sword Knot Seer, we can draw an additional card. So we are going to connecting with the Barrow Golf, and our opponent doesn't want to jump block, so we are going to use the ability, and we are taking here a Murktide Regent. Keep in mind we can't cast it off the Badlands, so we have to crack our Scalding Tarn to play at least a Tamio to get some board presence and a clue on the next turn. Here we have a slightly decision to shrink down our Barrow Golf in gain of the Murktide, but I'm thinking it's all fine from the stats. And here I'm just playing the Tamio so that we have some kind of board presence, so that we can get at least on our next turn a clue. And our opponent draws another Wasteland. He could be going after it, so he can waste us of double blue mana to prevent any further Murktide Regent. It's an option he has, or he can just cast the Reality Smasher, and he's going to cast the Kozilek's command, which we know about on the Barrow Golf. So we have at least our Murktide Regent in the game, and Barrow Golf did his task. He connected once, we get the Murktide Regent out of it, it's a fine trade. And here our opponent is casting a second Kozilek's command as a kind of cycling spell, so he's digging for maybe an answer for Murktide Regent. That's an option. And he should also be able to cast the Reality Smasher if he's sacrificing all tokens. And he find a Flashbreaker, which is really scary at his board state, because we can get on the air with the Murktide Regent. And here we are really lucky, we draw a Sword Size so that we can get rid of the remaining Reality Smasher. So the Flashbreaker does not matter that much. And here I'm going to crack the clue first, so that we have the most decisions to make. And we do a brainstorm, and I'm thinking it's also fine in casting the Sword Size. We can keep the brainstorm up if we find more lands, but at least for now on this turn we can't really cast anything else, and we can keep it for now. We can keep it for later, it will not matter that much, unless we find a fetch land maybe later, or can convert some hand cards into wheel cards. And here I'm just going for it because I see no upside in waiting, and there's good news. We find two good cards. We find Molten Collapse, which is an excellent removal spell with a Wasteland and a Brazen Borrower. I'm thinking all three cards matter in this matchup. And here we flipped also the Tamio, so a big upside on playing the Brainstorm. But keep in mind, it's a calculated decision because the downside was that we have to flip the Tamio and our opponent can kill her down. But if he is going after the Tamio, he's sacrificing a lot of damage to us. So he has to connect with the Sword Knot Seer and the Flash Raker. So we are at least preventing 5 damage from our life points. And our opponent is able to bounce our Murktide Regent, which is a pretty good answer, at least for now. And he's also able, if he double raised, to prevent it from coming down. If he is going after our Volcanic Island and Underground Sea, or after the double Underground Sea, and we knew what is on top of our library. We have a Brazen Borrower and a Wasteland stacked on top. So the board state is at least for now not in our favor, but keep in mind the Tamio absorbed here a lot of good damage for us, and our opponent is at 7 life points. So if we get the Murktide down, it could be a good attack. And here we have the option to cast Molten Collapse or Brazen Borrower, and I'm thinking it's a good spot to collapse the Sword Knot Seer so that we can do into our Wasteland, which we know. We can keep it up to cast the Brazen Borrower as a buddy, but here I'm going to go after the Cavern of Souls, because if our opponent draws a Line Breaker, we can prevent this one because it needs red mana, and he cannot cast it off Eye of Ugin, and if he want to cast something, he has to sacrifice his tokens, and we draw a perfect Underground Sea, so that we can cast our Murktide Regent and stabilize the board state from here. And the turn after, we can cast our Brazen Borrower, we can bounce something, or we can just apply the body if needed. And our opponent finds a colored mana source, so that if he draws a Line Breaker, he can cast it off of the clue tokens. And here our opponent is thinking what to do. Maybe he has a cast or is thinking about attacking. And here our opponent is attacking. So our Murktide is 7/7. He attacks with a 2/2. And here I'm not going to block because I'm really feared of this member. So I'm thinking there's no you do not attack with a 2/2 if you do not have the dismember. So I'm not falling for the trap, so to speak. And if our opponent has a dismember, he needs to cast it now anyways, and he decides to not do. So I'm thinking he brought in dismember, otherwise he wouldn't make that play. But I'm thinking even if he doesn't have dismember, it's a really smart way to at least bluff dismember in hand. And we are running the same configuration for game 3. And we have a decent starting hand. We have Fatal Push as an excellent removal. We have a Force of Will with Kaito for maybe a Chalice or a Dangerous Creature. And we have Molten Collapse as a good answer, but keep in mind we have the basic island and the Undercity Sewer, so our access to Molten Collapse is a little bit delayed. And here we have a difficult decision to make because we can sort size, but if we sort size, we have to go after the Badlands. We can fetch also for an Underground Sea, but then we need another fetch land later. So I'm going here for the Badlands, that if we find a second land or even 2 turns after, that we have access to Molten Collapse, because our Undercity Source comes into play tapped. And here we are getting rid of the Flash Raker, so our opponent has a hand of double Flash Raker and Lotus Petal. And we know our opponent has 2 Flash Raker remaining and 1 Lotus Petal. and he's playing the Lotus Petal to play maybe out the Flashbreaker, and he does. So he's sacrificing the Lotus Petal, and here we are going to force the Flashbreaker. So our opponent has one Flashbreaker remaining, and we have a little bit room to breathe, as to speak. We can surveil. We have a Fatal Push for later and a Brainstorm. I'm thinking Brainstorm is fine. It's a blue card for the force. And we also can play it for sure. And our opponent finds another land, and he's likely playing the Flashbreaker. So we have no revolt for now, so we can't deal with it, at least for now. And here I'm going just to collapse it, because I'm thinking with the mana base setup of our opponent, it's worth after getting after the Flashbreaker. And our opponent has no play for now, so no sword size, sword knot seer or something else. And I'm going here after the Eldrazi Temple, because it cuts our opponent down from every spell in his deck, so no Line Breaker, no Flashbreaker, and we are keeping the Brainstorm up, and we find a Wasteland, a Bowmaster, and a Sword Size. And I'm thinking here that keeping the Wasteland is important. You can make a decision to play Sword Size now, or keeping the Bowmaster as kind of pressure. And I'm thinking here, if we are going to waste, we want to apply our own clock as fast as possible, even if it's just an Orcish Bowmaster. But our opponent draw another Ancient Tomb, so our Bowmaster pressure plan is not so good. So we have just to pass, and we can Brainstorm and play our Orcish Bowmaster, and our opponent draws very strong. He draws a Cavern of Swords, so our Force of Will is not live anymore. So pretty good draw from our opponent's side, and we can't counter it with the, because it's cast from the land. And what we can do here is we can play our own Orcish Bowmaster and ping itself down. And with the dying of the creature, we have the revolt mechanic triggered on the Fatal Push, and can then Fatal Push the Sword Knot Seer with the trigger on the stack. So we are having the draw first, and then our opponent can discard a card. So we know about the sword size, and our opponent is going here after the Brainstorm, which makes totally sense. And we draw an unknown card, and we can now cast the Sword Size to see what's the last card remaining. So it's the Bounce Eldrazi card, not that scary. And here I'm going after the Ancient Tomb. The logic is the same behind. Our opponent needs at least 3 mana to apply a Line Breaker or a Flash Breaker, and I'm not counting here on forcing anything this game. If it's not Kozilek's Command or something else, because I'm not going after the Cavern of Swords here. And our opponent draws another land in form of Eldrazi Temple, so he has his mana back established. And here I'm putting away the 2 forces, so that we can play our own Murktide Regent. But keep in mind that we need to spend our both plus mana sources, so that we can't play the Murktide Regent and keep Consign up. But Consign has not that much targets. We can counter an Kozilek's Command or a trigger from a Sword Knot Seer, so it's okay to not keep this up the whole time. And we see what our opponent draws. It taps for mana, so it could be a Sword Knot Seer. And it's an Kozilek's Command, so he's going to scry, draw a card, and make 2 tokens, so that if he finds anything good, he can cast it now or next turn. So there's no 3 mana play, at least for now, but he can make a double play next turn. But we are going to attack anyways with our Murktide Regent. And we have lethal next turn, so we are playing the Tamio, so that we can make a clue next turn and have a Consign up for maybe Kozilek's Command or some kind of trigger. And even if it's a Flashbreaker trigger, we can counter it. And we will see what our opponent found to deal with the Murktide Regent. And he found nothing and conceded the game. So we run 4-1 with the only lose to the Lompox deck. So I'm thinking it's pretty strong. And at last we want to take a quick look at our deck list to see what was good, what was bad with the red splash. I'm thinking the Molten Collapse was fine, even if in the Eldrazi matchup it didn't show up quite that often, so we didn't have those moments where it removed Chalice of the Void with both triggers applied. So it's a little bit sad, but I'm thinking it's in theory, and it was a good card we removed. I'm thinking one Flashbreaker, which is fine. And I'm more proud of the 3 Pyroblast in the sideboard. I'm thinking over the run, it was a really good card to have in our sideboard. And I'm thinking also the Meltdown in theory is a good addition, and I really was happy with the mana base so far. We didn't screw up that often. We had on the game the last moment where we have the underground sewers within basic island. That of course is not a good setup for Molten Collapse, but it's the price we are paying for splashing those red cards in and to run a basic island and surveillance, so that can happen with any deck. And I'm thinking it's a good deck. I'm really proud of it. I think it has a huge potential to play, and I'm really seeking forward to run it to another league or even a challenge. So stay tuned. That was our first one with the deck. And if you are interested in how deck is built or what is the thought process behind it, I will link you the deck guide on the right screen. It's just a link. You can click on it if you are interested in those kind of contents, and we'll see whether we run it to another league or challenge. But I'm so far really impressed, and I really didn't miss the Netto so even maybe you can make an argument that in the Lompox matchup, Netto is a good card because Barrowgolf runs often into Smallpox, but I'm not thinking that's a huge advantage in the matchup because the matchup is overall not that much favored. So there are not 3 cards which can turn the matchup to our favor. It's a grindy matchup, it's a hard matchup for us. So I'm thinking Nethergolf could be slightly better. You can make those kind of arguments. But on the other hand, I didn't miss the Hymn to Turak. I was really happy with the Molten Collapse. It was always a fine card. And yeah, that's for now. And thanks for watching. And we see us on our next one with this deck.